Here again, Charles Gibson.
A little over 14 years ago, Pete Rose made what is no doubt the worst bet of his life, that he'd never have to tell the truth about his gambling. Now, as you've probably heard, he has confessed, finally admitting that he bet on baseball and on his own team. But is his confession enough? After years of lies and denials about the gambling that caused his lifetime banishment from the game he loves, that led to the exile he calls My Prison Without Bars in a new book, should we start believing him? You decide. Rule 21 in baseball, subsection D. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Any player, umpire, or club, or league official or employee who shall bet any sum whatsoever upon any baseball game in connection with which the bettor has a duty to perform shall be declared permanently ineligible. Permanently ineligible. That's posted in every clubhouse in baseball, isn't it?
A lot of players don't pay much attention to the fine print.
But that's not fine print. That's not infield fly rule. That's not.
It's not as big as you.
It's not when a game becomes official and whatever. That's the most important rule. That's the rule that goes to the integrity and to the authenticity of the game. So why would you violate it?
Well, I wish I could answer that question, but I just can't. I was wrong. I just stupid. Worst thing I ever did in my life.
You say
I've had to live with that for 14 years too, Charlie.
14 years since 1989. That was the year reports reached baseball that Pete Rose was in violation of Rule 21D, that he was betting on the game and betting on his own team. Pete was pulled out of spring training and summoned to New York to meet with incoming Commissioner Bart Giamatti and Giamatti's number 2 man, Fay Vincent.
He was just as charming and effervescent. And they're all jockeying around the way you do with a big baseball player. I finally said to him, Mr. Rose, look, we have evidence that you bet on baseball. Have you ever bet on baseball?
They asked me did I bet on baseball, and I said no.
He said, I'm not that stupid. He said, I would never bet on baseball.
And I told him I bet on football, and they said, we're not worried about that.
Well, I thought it was right, that he was just too smart. Nobody in their right mind would bet on baseball. And we believed him.
Everyone wanted to believe him, and many did, as Pete denied betting on baseball from 1989.
I'm happy to look in the camera now and say I never bet on baseball, and I never bet on Cincinnati Red baseball.
Right up until recently.
Is your position still that you did not bet on baseball?
Sure.
But now, finally, Pete Rose is ready to tell the truth. For 14 years, your case has hovered over baseball. Did you bet on baseball?
Yes, I did, and that was my mistake, not coming clean a lot earlier.
You're now saying, for the first time, publicly, yes, I bet on baseball.
I bet on baseball in 1987 and 1988.
Did you bet on your own team?
Yes.
Did you ever?
I believed in my team. I mean, I knew my team, but it never altered the way I tried to run the game.
Did you ever bet against your own team?
No. That'd be the last thing I'd ever even consider. That's because I want to win every game.
Winning has always been a passion for Rose. For 24 years, he played baseball with enthusiasm, determination, and zest. He was always possessed by the spirit of winning, and he backed down to no one. He would pile drive the catcher in an all-star game, an exhibition, if that's what it took to win. He set records, plenty of them.
Left center field, and there it is! Pete Rose does it! 4,192!
That broke Ty Cobb's mark for the most career hits and caused Rose himself to break down. But the record Rose cherishes most, 1,972 games he played in when his team won. He played on the winning side in more games than any major leaguer ever.
I had to be aggressive to be successful. because I was a little short in talent. You know, I didn't have Mickey Mantle's speed or Willie Mays' power.
Rose driving the ball to right field. Extra base hit. There it is.
I had a passion for the game. I looked at my passion as an obligation for the fans.
Mike Schmidt, what a play to get him.
Hall of Famer Mike Schmidt played with Rose and against him.
Pete probably was the first player to bring the headfirst slide into vogue. And he used to not just dive into the ground into the base, but he would dive up. You know what I mean? He would get about a yard off of the ground, and boom, he'd hit the ground, and you know, get filthy dirty, get up and slap the dirt off of himself, and you know, make some kind of a gesture, and the crowd would go nuts.
How's that?
Thank you. And that one to John, J-O-H-N.
Pete today is 62. Maybe there's a bit more stomach and a bit less hair, but he's still a star. His legendary career as a player reflected in all the memorabilia, some of which he had to sell to pay off gambling debts. The gambling on baseball, Rose claims, started when he stopped playing and began managing the Cincinnati Reds full-time.
I think that Pete Rose missed the rush of playing baseball, and gambling gave him that rush. Gambling really served the need to have some game going all the time.
In 1987, Michael Sokoloff was a young sports writer covering the Reds, and he saw Rose taking up with a rough crowd.
You know, he really had some tough-looking characters around him. They weren't baseball guys, and we learned later that they were, you know, bodybuilders, steroid pushers, bet runners.
Tommy Giosa was one of those guys.
We'd go to the racetrack, and you know, to drop $10,000 a night, you know, wouldn't be a big deal for him. And we didn't think it was a big deal. It was Pete Rose.
Point, stretch to the lead.
But by then, Rose was gambling heavily on sports and was getting into trouble.
Pete was in big-time debt, and Pete was desperate for money, and Pete thought, I'm losing money on football, I'm losing money on horses, but I know baseball. Let me start betting on baseball and get out of this hole that I'm in.
Tell me how something like that gets out of control to the point where you're betting the sport where you know the penalties are so drastic.
I can't remember the first time I made a baseball bet, but I don't think when I made that bet that I says, now what's going to happen to me if I get caught? I don't think I ever considered that.
Investigators would later say that using runners and bookies, Rose bet hundreds of times on baseball and other sports, sometimes up to $15,000 a day. What Rose didn't bet on was that baseball would hire a tough former prosecutor, John Dowd, to look into the charges against him.
And within a few days, he called me and said, Fay, we have a big problem here. He said, there's evidence all over the place that Pete Rose bet on baseball.
I feel like a fresh piece of meat.
Word of the investigation leaked out, but Rose kept denying betting, even under oath.
6 times, by my count, in that deposition. He asked you.
Once I say it, I'm not going to retract it. I'm going to continue to say the same thing.
The evidence against Rose was mounting, including betting slips said to be in Rose's handwriting, and records of phone calls from the Reds clubhouse.
Every night, Pete Rose would go into the clubhouse at 7:15 and call the bookie. Now, we knew it was the bookie because we had the number, we had the operator's name, and we also confirmed with the bookie that that's when Rose called him.
By August 1989, even Rose realized the game was over, and so Vincent wrote up an agreement.
He would agree that he would leave baseball for life, but he wouldn't admit, and also very importantly, he wouldn't deny the allegation that he bet on Major League Baseball.
Under the rules of baseball, Rose could apply to be reinstated after 1 year. But in reality, nothing would happen unless Rose came clean, told the truth, and showed he'd reformed. With no confession, Rose would spend the next decade in baseball purgatory.
I couldn't get a response from baseball for 12 years. It's like I died. And they knew I died, and they didn't want to bring me back. They were just going to let me rot.
But now, is his confession enough to get him back into the game?
I'm the only guy that knows what happened, regardless of what the investigator said.
And are his gambling days really behind him? When Prime Time continues.
cold. My sinuses feel like they're going to explode.
Aisle 5.
My allergies have my sinuses all stuffed up.
Aisle 5.
Now tell them where you feel the pressure.
Here. Aisle 5.
Come on.
Sinus misery? Get Sudafed. Nothing stronger at relieving even your worst sinus symptoms. Not even a prescription.
I'm so congested.
Sudafed, aisle 5.
Sudafed, prescription strength sinus relief. And for a sinus headache, try maximum strength Sudafed, sinus headache.
In Italian cooking, everything must be filled with happiness. Even the lasagna. So Olive Garden introduces new chicken and portobello mushroom lasagna. Layers of chicken, portobello mushrooms, and cheese topped with tomato Alfredo sauce. Or new hearty 3-meat lasagna, yours with endless salad and breadsticks. Our 2 new lasagnas starting at $9.95. Olive Garden. When you're here, your family.
Look, I finished our taxes.
Really? Are you sure we did it right?
Yeah. See, with this TurboTax software, I just answered simple questions and it put the answers on all the right forms.
Did we get all our deductions?
Even ones I didn't think of.
Right. What if we made a mistake?
Calculations are guaranteed accurate.
Psst. Are you sure the IRS got it?
I got an e-file confirmation.
So that's it? We're done?
Yep, got a refund today.
I've always liked that TurboTax.
Really?
TurboTax. Taxes made easy, taxes done right.
Tonight, Pete Rose finally tells all to Charles Gibson. But tomorrow on Good Morning America, it's your turn to ask the questions. Go to abcnews.com right now. Send us your questions for Pete Rose. What do you want to know from him? Tomorrow morning, Pete Rose takes the hot seat, answering your questions live only on Good Morning America.
On live TV, guests will do anything.
I will donate $1,000 to any charity of your choice if I can kiss you.
Dane, she's not a hooker. It's all new. Jimmy Kimmel Live, ABC tonight.
It's a new year of Sunday's Best. First, these cops will risk everything to save a classroom of kids.
Get in here. Don't shoot.
An all-new 10-8. Then, this agent lost 2 years of her life. In 1 hour, it will all come back with a vengeance. All-new Alias.
A police officer is dead.
And if you think you can't be shocked by a television drama,
A man is being tortured.
think again.
This is our most important case.
An all-new practice after 10-8 and Alias, starting 8/7 Central Sunday on ABC.
Hi, you've reached 8 Simple Rules. We're all new next Tuesday. Leave a message.
Good news. Looks like I'm going to be heading out your way soon.
Don't miss David Spade on 8 Simple Rules, all new ABC Tuesday.
I want my money back. This parrot doesn't talk.
Yes, he does. Plato, how can this man get a passport?
1-800-FED-INFO.
The bird's a brain. How can this man find out about Social Security benefits?
1-800-FED-INFO.
Plato here knows the number for the Federal Consumer Information Center, where you'll find all you need to know about government benefits and services.
Really?
Well, a 1-800-FED-INFO, yeah.
I'll keep him. He talked me into it.
He talked me into it.
In his new book, Pete Rose writes, "For the last 14 years, I consistently heard the statement, if Pete Rose comes clean, all will be forgiven. Well, I've done what you asked," he writes. "The rest is up to the commissioner." But is Pete's admission now enough to get him reinstated to the game? And has he really given up gambling for good? October 1999, Atlanta, the third game of the World Series. Pete Rose has been allowed back in a ballpark for the first time in 10 years to be honored as one of baseball's all-time great players.
Pete Rose does it. 4,192.
But even on that night, Rose was again confronted with the issue.
Are you willing to show contrition, admit that you bet on baseball, and make some sort of an apology to that effect?
Not at all, Jim, not at all.
I didn't think it was going to help me to tell Jim Gray or any other reporter, because there's only one person that I had to get to and tell, and that was the commissioner of baseball.
In part because of the fans' enthusiasm, and also the intercession of former teammates like Mike Schmidt and Joe Morgan, Rose finally got his private meeting 14 months ago with current Commissioner Bud Selig.
He said, well, what happened? You going to tell me what happened?
And finally you said to him, yes.
Not finally, right away. I mean, I didn't beat around the bush. And I elaborated as far as, you know, what I could remember as far as how often and stuff like that. Not every day, not every game.
Did you walk away from that meeting, Pete?
Good feeling.
With a good feeling?
I took this million-pound weight off my shoulders.
Confession being good for the soul.
Yeah.
Is there any agreement? Is there any understanding with the commissioner's office, if you admit it now, that they would reinstate you?
None whatsoever.
No guarantees?
No. No guarantees. So I could be sitting out on the limb for the next 20 years.
And what Rose said privately then, he says publicly now.
It's time to clean the slate. It's time to take responsibility. Knowing what I know today, I mean, I'm 14 years late.
14 years late in saying, yes, I did bet on baseball. Is it a sickness, Pete?
It can be. I mean,
there are gambling addicts.
Yes, but if you're addicted, how come you're not stopped? I don't think I ever gambled out of my means. You know, I didn't take the house payment money or the gas and electric bill money or that kind of money and gambled. That was a part of my life that you can't change. You wish it hadn't happened, but you can just guarantee yourself it won't happen again.
Even though he now admits betting on baseball, Rose still denies a gambling addiction, and he still denies much of the most damning evidence that baseball gathered against him.
I never picked up my phone and called a bookmaker and bet on a baseball game from the clubhouse. Never.
Rose also still denies that those betting slips were his, even though an FBI handwriting expert says they were.
I know that those betting slips weren't mine because I didn't have betting slips like that. I'm the only guy that knows what happened, regardless of what the investigator said.
What can I say? I mean, I don't think he's coming clean, and that's too bad. I think Pete would have been so much, and still would be much better advised to tell everything he knows. Why is he holding back? There's no mileage in that.
But in fairness, all that is a debate about past history. How about today? When first banished from baseball, Rose was told if he was ever to be reinstated, he would have to reconfigure his life. So has he done it?
I'm not going to go back to gambling. I mean, it's as simple as that. I got a little bit on the ball.
How can baseball be sure?
Well, they can never be sure. I mean, all you can do is give your word, and if the commissioner would ever give me a second chance, there's no way I could let him down. There's just some things you can't do.
Can't do? Well, there are also some things friends tell him he shouldn't do. Recently, for instance, Rose bought part interest in a racehorse. He spends time at the track, and he says he does bet on the horses. Nothing wrong with that, perhaps, but friends wonder if it's not like an alcoholic going into a bar.
I said, Pete, look, if you're going to become reinstated into baseball, the next day you can't be at the track. You being in gambling environments is not good. If you're Pete Rose and you're trying like hell to become reinstated into the family of baseball, and the issue was gambling in your life, you damn sure need to figure out a way to give it up.
But Mike Schmidt does think Rose understands that, knows what he has to do, and is willing to do it.
And I start out with admittance and remorse and honesty, and it has to be from the heart. And he needs to speak to his fans, and then he's going to have to speak to the Hall of Famers. And that's all going to be hard. But Pete truly is remorseful and understands that he's going to have to make amends with all of those entities for this all to go away.
Former Commissioner Fay Vincent isn't so sure.
I think Pete's failed to understand this is not about himself. And his future in baseball is all about his ability to see the other side of the issue, namely what's in baseball's interest.
But the way Pete Rose sees it, his desire to return to the game is in baseball's best interest. He feels he's paid his debt and can now help the game. He wants his place in the Hall of Fame, yes. But even more, he says, he wants to manage again and manage the Reds.
That's my hometown, Cincinnati. Obviously, that's my favorite team, the Cincinnati Reds.
You want to participate in the game?
Sure. It drives me crazy, like when I put the Reds on, and there's 20,000 empty seats. I want them to be like the Cubs, or like the Yankees, or like Boston, The seats are for asses. And you got to have an ass in every seat every night.
So what should the commissioner do? No one disputes Pete Rose is one of the greats, but he gambled on his game, on his team. Is 14 years banished from the game enough punishment? We thought the last word should go to Pete Rose. Just look at that camera and say to the public and to the commissioner, as clearly as you can, what's the case for reinstating Pete Rose? Why should they reinstate you?
Because I understand that I made a mistake. And there's not a damn thing I can do about that mistake. We can rehash it all we want. And if you make a mistake and you understand how big the mistake was, and you're willing to rectify that, and which I have. I mean, the furthest thing from my mind right now is making a bet on anything. I think people have a good idea that I'm sincere about knowing what I did, and I shouldn't have did it. And you know, I lied about not coming clean about betting on baseball. But when I look you in the eye and tell you that that phase of my life is gone and will never come back, I mean that with all sincerity in the world. That's why if the commissioner would ever give me a second chance, there's no way I could let him down. I owe baseball. Baseball don't owe me a damn thing. I owe baseball. And the only way I can make my peace with baseball is taking this negative somehow and making it into positive. It's the only way I can do it.
Major League Baseball officials have told us they're going to take Pete Rose's book and his statements tonight into account, but that no decision has been made about his return to baseball, either as a manager or about his eligibility for the Hall of Fame. If you have more questions for Pete Rose, you can join an online Q&A at abcnews.com, and you can see him live tomorrow on Good Morning America when he'll be answering some of those questions you submit online. We'll be back.
For the latest video highlights, log on to America Online, keyword ABC News. We'll be right back.
Every family in America should prepare itself for a terrorist attack. You can learn how on our new website. You can call for a brochure. Terrorism forces us to make a choice. We can be afraid, or we can be ready.
What's this?
Breakfast.
It's kind of early, buddy.
You guys need to take some cholesterol off of you.
Honey, have you been reading the Cheerios box again?
I got that off the box.
Cheerios is still the only leading cold cereal clinically proven to reduce cholesterol to help your heart.
That was very thoughtful of you. Very early, but very thoughtful.
Cheerios, good for the heart.
2 lattes.
This is like the 4th coffee corner to open in this neighborhood in the last few months.
It's the hottest thing going.
Yeah.
I just bought some of their stock. I think you should buy some. This thing is going to take off.
Well, this double mocha coconut latte is tasty.
Frothy.
This is where we come in. At Charles Schwab, we understand popular companies don't always make profitable investments. We'll help you develop a disciplined investment strategy that goes beyond chasing hot stocks. Call 1-800-7-SCHWAB.
Now this is big.
Find some of the greatest savings of the season during the big clearance sale at Radio Shack.
It's so big, it's
big savings of 25 to 60% on select toys, $20 to $70 savings on select audio and video, and 25 to 50% savings on select cool gadgets.
It doesn't get any bigger than this.
The big clearance sale at Radio Shack. You've got questions, we've got answers.
I've got a question. How in the heck do I get down?
She's the friend who can make you laugh or melt your heart, not to mention melting Brads. Next week, Jennifer Aniston, real and revealing, talking to Diane Sawyer about saying goodbye to old friends. Her new movie, her marriage.
Who's more neurotic, you or him?
her break with her mother,
I'm so confused.
and all the antics that come from the funny friend next door.
Oh, Jennifer.
That's next week on Prime Time.
And that's it for tonight. We thank you for joining us in our first program of the new year. I'm Charles Gibson.
I'm Diane Sawyer. We'll both see you tomorrow on Good Morning America. Until then, good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Gene Hackman, Will Smith, the ABC Monday Movie of the Week, Enemy of the State, Monday.